Welcome to this podcast. We're so excited to have you again here with us on one of the last topics regarding compliance, which is sales. And we're very, very excited to just give you this summary as we are around the corner for sales and AEP. And first of all, I want to say thank you to Diana for being here again. How are you, Diana?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Good. I'm feeling pretty good. And we just came from the road shows too. And it was very exciting to see that people are actually getting the topic of compliance and they're not really afraid or fearful around this topic. So that's something very good and very it just makes us feel good, right, Diana? We've been working hard on this.
Yes, and we appreciate everyone who's been attending our webinars, our trainings, our road shows, and we get really excited when you are excited about learning about compliance.
Yes, we even took the boogeyman for those of you that saw our trainings to the road show. So if you didn't go to the road shows, you missed the boogeyman because the boogeyman was there, and it was just such a good time sharing with the agents and even talking about compliance and seeing that some things that were kind of in the gray areas for them, they're now very clear, and they feel that they're ready for AEP. So today we're going to do a summary of our last training on sales, and we're just going to go right into it, Diana. And if you can just start telling us, first of all, what does or who does this rule apply to? The sales and all of this, just every agent, or can you just give us that first?
Well, this particular, for this, we're talking about mostly Medicare Advantage, prescription drug plans, and some Medicare supplements as well.
Okay. And one important thing that we talked about too during the training is about leads, and those leads that agents buy, right? So we just want to make that clear. And what are the steps if you're buying your leads?
Yes. So the carriers want to make, and CMS want to make sure that you are getting leads compliantly. So the carriers want to know who your lead source is if you're not creating the leads yourself. Mm-hmm. So if you are purchasing your leads, you have to make sure that you disclose to the carriers who your lead sources are.
Okay. We also talked about the timing between an educational event and a sales event. There was a lot of questions about that.
Yes, 12 hours. We had a lot of questions. So if the sales event came first and the educational event came after, can you do them back to back? The answer is no. It's 12-hour space between either one. It doesn't matter which one is first. And this is on the same location. And we have to understand, what does the same location mean? That means in the same building or an adjacent building from where you held the first event.
Okay. Now, another topic that we discussed, and I have to say like a lot, is around the SOA. I think that people are very fearful that, or they just wanted to make sure that they are really compliant in order to sell. So how about we just think about an agent? Let's say I'm an agent and I want to go sell. So can I just go and knock on somebody's door or give them a call, Diana, to discuss plan benefits and in detail?
No. So you may call a consumer if you have permission to contact. Permission to contact is not the same as the scope of appointment. So you may contact them with the permission, and then if they choose to discuss plan benefits, then you collect what's called a scope of appointment. And on the scope of appointment, you are going to write or check off everything that's going to be discussed at that meeting. Mm-hmm. Now, you have to wait 48 hours before that meeting takes place. And that's a minimum of 48 hours. It doesn't have to be only 48 hours. So you have up to a year. Remember, when you collect a scope of appointment, you have up to a year to conduct that meeting.
Yes, we had some confusion about that you were mentioning, Diana, on our webinar with Mike and Josh, our overview on compliance, because people were wondering, okay, so the SOA, the scope of appointment, has a place there where you put the date that you are intending or you're wanting to meet with that person. So what happens if if I don't meet with that person, is that SOA still good? And that's when those 12 months come in place.
So the scope of appointment has a date of when the scope of appointment was taken. So that's one date. Then it has a separate date of when the meeting actually took place. And so those two dates must be at least 48 hours apart. So say if I collect a scope of appointment from you today, and maybe we plan on meeting next week, but it didn't happen. And then, maybe a month later, you're ready to meet, then we can go ahead and meet a month later because I have the scope of appointment. Now, when does it expire? Like I said, when you collect the scope of appointment, it expires 1 year from the date that you collect the scope of appointment, or when you make that meeting, whichever comes first.
And that is a great point, because also people were asking, do I need an SOA every time I meet with my client? So just as you said, I collect my scope of appointment. I make my appointment for next week. I meet with them. I give them the sales presentation, but at the end, they're not ready. And I have to set another appointment with them to enroll, or, maybe they call me, they're like, I'm ready to enroll. Can you come over? Do I need another scope of appointment? That was the question.
Okay. So when you collect the first scope of appointment, let's just say, for instance, you were interested on only discussing Medicare supplement plans. And so we write down, we're going to discuss Medicare supplement. We're going to set the appointment 3 days from today. And we do have that discussion. We discuss Medicare supplement. Now, after the discussion, you didn't make a decision, and you decide that you want to meet again at a later date. So we go ahead and push that off to a later date. I do collect a new scope of appointment because maybe at that appointment you want to discuss Medicare Advantage, or maybe you want to discuss PDP plans or something different. So yes, you once you make contact and make that meeting, the original scope of appointment is expired. Mm-hmm. So we'll collect a new one if we're going to meet again.
Okay, so you're mentioning something very important, Diana, and we say this in our trainings as best practices. Use common sense, right? Like, so in that line of thought, when we think about the SOA, and the reason why the SOA exists is to ensure that the client, again, is not being pushed, or is not being doesn't feel obligated to speak about something they don't want to speak. So that's why it says what they want to discuss. And I think that if we just think about that, and we are changing the subject with our client during our appointment, or they want to discuss something that it has not been included in that SOA, then common sense will tell you, then I need another SOA, right? And again, one of the things that our president said in one of the webinars is do right by the customer and you should be okay. So if you're always taking care of your customer, I think that CMS will see that, will see your intentions, and you're doing right by the customer, and you should be okay. Another thing, Diana, that people were asking about was the disclaimers, and how to know, which plans, which areas, all of those questions around the disclaimers. So let's talk about that.
Yes. So the disclaimers are going to depend on your content. So, I had a lot of questions. Can I put a disclaimer on my email? The TPMO disclaimer. Okay, well, you should have a TPMO disclaimer in your email if you have dependence on your content. Now, if you're just sending an email to an agent, happy birthday, and that's it, there's no sales content in that email. So the disclaimer is not necessary. However, if you're sending, you're exchanging information or sending information to your consumer regarding plans or anything that would be considered marketing, then by all means, that disclaimer needs to be on the email. So just think about what it is that you have, what is your content, and then you can make a decision then. Now, the one thing with the TPMO disclaimer, it does need to be on the website, regardless whether you have marketing content or not.
Yes. Another question was, what if I sell in different counties or in different states? And we had that question a lot. We even had a question about, can I just use a general disclaimer? And they kind of made their own disclaimer.
Yes.
In this email. So let's talk about that too.
Okay.
Diana.
So the TPMO disclaimer is a standardized disclaimer, and what that means is that it has to be as written, whether you convey it verbally or written, electronically, however it is, but it has to be as the government wrote it. So you cannot change it. You cannot add something or alter it or change we to I or none of that. It has to be exactly as written. And so I know it, and that particular disclaimer for 2024 AEP, it does include the number of organizations and the number of plans. Now, how do you determine the number of organizations and the number of plans? It's going to depend on the consumer's area, say zip code. And so on your website, well, how do you determine the member's zip code? Well, you don't. So CMS, I did write to CMS, and they replied, said that they will allow the 2023 disclaimer that doesn't state the number of organizations and the number of plans. Now, remember, they're standardized, so you cannot take the 2024 disclaimer and scratch out number of organizations and number of plans. You can't do that. It has to be as written. So take the 2023 disclaimer as written, put that on your website. However, when your consumer contacts you and you have their area, you will have to give them the 2024 disclaimer at that time.
All right. Yeah, I think that is very important, and I think it's pretty clear when you talk about the areas that you're representing. But before we continue talking about disclaimers, I want to go back to SOAs because there's 3 exceptions to the 48-hour cool-off period. Again, this is for the 48-hour waiting period, not for the SOA, because sometimes they say, oh, so I don't need an SOA. No, you always need an SOA. But there is 3 exceptions to the 48-hour cool-off period, and maybe you can just mention these to us.
So the 48-hour waiting period is exempt if the consumer walks into your office, so they come in, and it has to be consumer initiated. You cannot call them and say, hey, Mrs. Jones, walk into my office. No, it has to be consumer initiated, walk into your office. Any inbound calls from them, again, consumer initiated. Say you're at you have a retail location, like informal sales retail, they come in, you can do it then. Also at sales events, you could go ahead and roll them then. And then also at the end of AEP. So the last 4 days, it is exempt.
Okay, so if you are 4 days from the end of the valid enrollment period, then you don't need the 48 cool-off period. You still have to collect the SOA, and right there where it says the date, you just write the same date, and there is a section there that you can put how the appointment was initiated, if it was a walk-in or if it was
correct
an in-person, and then you would put their walk-in or inbound call, and that would exempt you from those 48-hour waiting period. Okay, so this takes me also to the next topic, which is what type of appointments we have. You can have a phone call, you can have an inbound call again, or you are calling that person after you've collected the SOA and you're ready to discuss the plans. And then you can also have virtual and, of course, in person. And we had a lot of questions around the SOAs and the disclaimers when you have the person in the phone and you have to read the disclaimer. So
correct.
Let's talk about that.
So the TPMO disclaimer for inbound, for any telephonic enrollments, video enrollments, you do have to read the disclaimer within the first minute of the call. Mm-hmm. So it's best to use a tool like, say, Simply Enroll, where the script is there and it has the disclaimer toward the front of it. So make sure that you do it within that first minute. If you are using your own script, then just make sure that disclaimer is is conveyed within the first minute of the call.
Yes, and you mentioned something important is simple enroll, and we mentioned this during the road shows. And again, our president Mike and Josh, our vice president here at the brokerage, they have mentioned this several times. That is a very helpful tool when it comes to compliance. Of course, it's helpful in other areas too for sales. You have all the information there. It's all embedded in the tool, but it also helps you stay compliant. So I kind of want to go over what parts of compliance and what points of compliance does Simple Enroll help us with?
Well, it helps with the disclaimers, but also it follows every process of the sale that CMS requires. So the pre-enrollment checklist, for instance. So if you follow the script and you follow it exactly as it is, then you should be compliant with the sale. Just make sure to read everything that's on there. Do not skip over anything. Mm-hmm. And I know like sometimes it could be a little lengthy, but just remember that you're basically, when you're reading the script, you are your consumer's eyes. Mm-hmm. So you want to make sure that you read everything that they would read had they had the information in front of them.
Yes, and there's also two things that I think are very helpful for agents when they use Simple Enroll. And one of them, again, is the SOA. It gives them like several ways of collecting the SOA through a text, through an email. And it also helps with the call recording. And this is something that a lot of agents are like, how am I supposed to record the calls? Well, use Simple Enroll, and it's one click away. You get your phone number. You buy it through the tool. Even here at the brokerage, we'll pay for that, for your phone number. And it'll just make your life so much easier.
It'll store it for you. It's just so simple and so easy to use, and it just makes a lot of sense.
Yes, and also when you said something else that is very important, when you put the zip code, it automatically pulls the disclaimers and the plans and the areas that you're working with. You just have to read. Just have to follow the script. And I was delivering a training for a contact center on compliance, and I told them the script, it's the road to success. So just read the script. It's right there. All of it is embedded in that tool, and it should make your life very easy. Diana, once they have let's say that the agent has the client in the phone, they've delivered the sales presentation, that person says, okay, I'm ready to enroll. Can they just go ahead and enroll in that call, or how does it work? Do they have to call back? Or do they call back the client?
So it depends on who initiated the call. So if the consumer initiated the call and you went into the sales presentation, then yes, if they're interested in enrollment, you can go on with the enrollment. However, say it was a scheduled appointment and you're the one that initiated the call to do the sales presentation. If the consumer is interested in enrollment, you would have to request for them to call you back, because you could only enroll with inbound calls.
Yes, and I think it is so important to understand when you're supposed to call back your client and when it's okay to just continue with the call, because there's been a lot of questions around that.
Yes. So I know that's one rule that is not really well known. And it is one that is enforced. So make sure that your client is the one that initiated the call if you're going to enroll.
Yes.
And yes, if you do the sales presentation, another question was, do I have to wait 48 hours for the enrollment if they're interested in enrolling? No. You only have to wait the 48 hours if you're doing a sales presentation. But if they're interested in enrolling right then and there, you did this sales presentation, they chose a plan, but the only thing is that the call was not inbound, then you could ask them to just, won't you call me right back, and then we'll go ahead and continue with the enrollment.
All right. This is, a lot of good information, and I'm hoping that we're not forgetting anything. I think we've covered everything that at least everything that people have been asking. And again, if you have any question, feel free to contact us. We have a lot of information in the brokerage link. You can find our previous trainings on communication and marketing, on events too, what to do, when it's a formal event, when it's an informal event, what you should give out in a formal event, if you can give out full meals or snacks. All of those details are on those trainings, and also our last sales event where sales training, where you can find a lot of information as well on specifics regarding sales. You can find webinars on landing page, which is 2024compliance.com. You can go there and find more information as well. And you can find also Diana's email and phone number at the bottom of this podcast link, and please feel free to contact her. She's such a sweet lady. During the road shows, I was like, hey, Diana. She was in the back and everybody was waving at her. And I hope that people feel comfortable now on reaching out, asking questions. Really, compliance has been part of our life since we were little. We talked about this in school. Raise your hand if you want to talk. Turn in your assignment. All of these things have been part of our lives. When you drive, abide by the rules, otherwise your license is going to be removed. It's the same thing. You just need to really get informed. Fear comes when there is lack of information, and that's what we're here for, to make sure that all this information is getting to you, all these resources are getting out to you. So just enjoy this AEP sales period is around the corner, literally, and we're ready for you. So thank you, Diana, for joining us again today. And
thank you, and thank all of you.
Yes, we're very excited, and I think that our agents are ready.
Yeah. So happy selling, everyone. Happy AEP.
Thank you, guys. We'll see you in our next podcast.